some 30 years ago, when my wife and I were in our first position, which is way off in the hills of Massachusetts, there was very little to do because out there radio waves seemed to fall short. And television signals were always very snowy, even in July and August. And so we learned to do what other people did, which was we went dancing. Now, to say that I went dancing is to say that a turtle went dancing. I had no experience, but I was told that when one goes contra dancing, grace is less important than accuracy. And so we learned how to be contra dancers. In fact, it got to the point where I was so eager to go that I would arrange to open the town hall so some folks could come in and play, people like Bruce, but 37 years ago when you were a kid. Right, well, and we still share Christmas cards with one or two of those that we met those years ago. Anyone here remember watching the series The Civil War, Ken Burns? Remember that lovely tune that began at the Ashokan Farewell? Well, that's written by Jay Unger, and I played piano for Jay once or twice long ago when he wasn't known and I wasn't any good. Now he's famous and I'm still no good. Now, I'm telling you all this because in my other churches over the years, it was my custom on Christmas Eve to tell a story that I wrote myself. But we don't have time on Christmas Eve to linger there. So I decided I'd give you one that I wrote about a fellow who's learning how to dance. And he learns on Christmas Eve. And the title of the story is the title of a tune that you'll hear later in this service at the very end. It's called The Moon and Seven Stars. Ed was lonely. He missed the city, capital T, capital C, city. He grew up there along McGinnis Boulevard within sight of St. Stanislaus or St. Stan's. And now he was in Richmond, New Hampshire. And if you don't know where McGinnis Boulevard is, you'll never find Richmond, New Hampshire. In case you want to go, you go north from Athol, Massachusetts, up Route 32. You go through Royalston and North Royalston over the dam. And when the road gets better, you'll be in New Hampshire and you'll be in Richmond because, you see, New Hampshire spends more money on its roads than Massachusetts does. But then again, they have fewer of them. Anyway, there's not much to see in Richmond but trees and houses about every 200 yards. Most are pretty old and saggy houses. Some driveways, you can't see the house from the road, and those are the ones that lead to the new houses. Just about when you've gone too far and you think you've gone beyond where you need to be, you'll see a blinking red light up far ahead, and that's the Peterborough Turnpike. If you go through that intersection, you'll be leaving Richmond. That's all there is. Oh, there's a church just past the pike, and it's on the east, and right at the stop sign, there's a gas station and a general store. The houses are a little closer together there, but that's about it. Oh, and there's a town hall. One thing you have to know is that every town in New England has a town hall, and it really is just that, a hall. Big building with a big room. It looks like a church on the outside. It often has a steeple, but it's not a church. To make sure people don't get confused, there's usually a sign on the front door, and it says, Town Hall. Ed came to the town hall a week ago thinking it was a church, which is why they have that sign, like I said. He was looking to find out about a Christmas Eve service, and seeing the white steeple, he walked up to the front door before he realized it was, in fact, the town hall. He'd begun to think New Englanders deliberately confused outsiders. For example, houses always had numbers, but no one actually put them up. Roads had names, but only a few of them actually had signs. And of course, why bother when everyone knows who one is and where one lives and on what road? When he asked for directions, he got something like, well, you go south on the old Royalston Road, past the Perkins house, and then turn right where the tree fell down a couple of years ago. You can't miss it. And there he was, standing on the town hall steps, wondering what the locals were thinking as they drove by. So he tried to look like he meant it and started reading the notices that are tacked to the bulletin board, the selectmen's minutes, the planning board, the school board. And right next to the official bulletin board was another notice, Christmas Eve dance. Someone was renting the hall to hold a dance. How quaint, he almost said aloud. Ed wondered if it would be a square dance or even a ballroom thing with men in old suits with too short legs and women wearing chiffon that smelled of mothballs. In either case, he knew it would involve people more his parents' age, heck, even his grandparents' age. And he sighed the urban sigh of resignation and went back to his car. The sun hung low and glowered with a sullen orange light. Sunset would come shrouded with clouds and the thicket of trees that surrounded the town like a fence. He ignored the lights and the music that defied winter's dark and cold. Trudging along the parking lot, he noticed the coating of white splatter marks on his car and everybody else's. Whoever said the country was clean had never spent a winter in the country. The salt and the sand and the slush follow you everywhere, even indoors. From his car, he could see down behind the town hall, and there was a pond separating it from the old town burial ground. It was well frozen, and Ed suddenly tried to imagine the Rockefeller Center ice skating rink and Prometheus on the other side, and the thought of Prometheus at this particular pond made him feel particularly lonesome. Besides, it would have to be at exactly the spot where they keep the town tomb. You know what a town tomb is, don't you? When the ground gets too cold and you die, they park you there until the ground thaws, and then they'll dig a hole and put you in. How Ed got to Richmond is a long story, too long to tell, but he was about 30 years old, and he was living with his parents because there's no place he could afford as a school teacher. And so when he saw an ad offering incentives to those willing to teach in rural areas, he kind of already imagined a picture postcard town, you know, the kind you get in your Christmas cards. And little did he know that picturesque houses are also drafty and that rural students are just as bored as urban students. It also did not help that there were very few marriageable women about. And when he heard that Miss Harding was his next-door neighbor, he harbored a thought that they might hit it off. And they did, only Miss Harding is 75 years old. She herself was a former teacher from Keene, that's the big town in the area, who moved here when her uncle died, and she got the house and the will. Ed dropped by, not knowing this, of course, and dropped by on some pretense. And when she answered the door, she could tell he was hoping for someone younger. Miss Harding? He asked. Yes, and you are? Ed Rosenberger. Oh, you're my new neighbor from New York. You heard about me. Oh, heavens, yes, everyone knows about you. Ed felt even more unconscious. Well, I heard there was another teacher in town, and I kind of hoped that I might be a bit younger. Sorry, he said sheepishly. No, I should have come to see you and welcome a fellow teacher, and why not come in anyway? I can still make some coffee. I'd like that, ma'am. Call me Sally, please. I have former students with grown children who call me ma'am. And they sat down for the first of several chats, so that by October, Ed felt he had a friend in Sally. This was something unexpected. He had neighbors back in Greenpoint, but they all knew him as Mort and Gertie's boy. Here he was just Ed from New York, and that was all anyone knew really, except Sally, of course. Back at his house, he stomped the slush into the old welcome mat at the back door and left his coat and boots in what he was told was called the mud room. The light was blinking on his answering machine. It was Sally. Beep. Is this Ed? I don't often leave messages, but it's easier to call back. But I thought you'd like to know there's a Christmas Eve service at the Congregational Church. There isn't a Christmas Eve service at the Congregational Church. Most people just keep Christmas at home, I guess. Anyway, you can go to Keene. They have a Catholic church there. Sorry. End of message. Beep again. Ed, Sally again. Did you know there was a dance at the town hall Christmas Eve? I know it's not church, but it's something. Beep. Ed, there might be some folks more your age there. Beep. Ed, I mean it. You really should go. Ed laughed at each message as it came in and decided he would go. What else could he do, really? Beep. Ed, it starts at 8. Unconvinced, he made himself a sandwich and ate it hanging over the sink like men do, washing it down with leftover coffee like young men do. It was the last cup and grounds got between his teeth, so he had to brush his teeth, and then he called Sally and he got her answering machine. Hi, Sally. Ed, thanks for the calls, and yes, I'll go to the dance, he said with a bit of resignation. She picked up. Sorry, Ed, I was getting dressed. Going out? To the dance, in fact. Who's the lucky fellow, he asked. Well, actually, I'm going stag, but there's room on my dance card if you want to go. Sure, said Ed, shaking his head at the fact that his Christmas date was someone older than his mother. No wonder young people fled this town. So, shall I come around 7:45? Oh, no, she said. I have something to do after the dance. I'll meet you there. The hidden life of maiden ladies, Ed thought. wondering what she could have to do after a dance in the middle of nowhere in New England. An assortment of cars were already outside the town hall. Light from the hall poured in large yellow trapezoids onto the snow-packed yard. Music was already playing, but the crunch of his tires made it hard to understand. The cars were not all local. Many were from Massachusetts. A few came from Vermont. A lot had odd bumper stickers like "I brake for hobbits." Thumping up the wooden steps to clean his boots, he heard not a combo or some recorded country music, but a fiddle, a piano, and a concertina. As he entered, he saw lines of people like that scene in Gone with the Wind, where some were twirling and then walking and bouncing and something else altogether. Sometimes half the people were standing still, but everyone was dancing. There was a pattern to it, and the concertina player was shouting over the music, giving them directions that made no sense at all. Spin round to the right, now balance and swing. Spin round again and balance and swing. 2 more times with that pretty little thing, and then we'll move along. The caller stopped, but the dancers kept moving in little whirling circles within their long lines. Then the caller came back in. Now down the center with your own and bring that lady right back home. Now you cast off right and left over, right and left again, and we all start over. He was speaking in rhymes. Ed was amazed at the almost military intricacy with dancers moving between each other and marching back. Of course, they were not at all stiff. They moved smoothly with a little sauce in their step. And then the tune ended. Everyone clapped, and only then did he see Sally in the middle of it, all red-cheeked and smiling. Her partner turned out to be another woman, which is not unusual because there are always more women than men at dances. But he also noticed a couple of male couples. When the caller said, choose a partner, everybody changed partners, and it didn't matter who was dancing with whom. Sally saw Ed across the floor and came over and said, come on, dance with me. Sally, I really don't know how. But she pulled him into the line, clucking at him like a teacher, the way she still was. You can do this, Ed. And after all, if an old woman like me can do this, you can too. 4 hands from the top, said the caller. Ed looked as though the caller were speaking Greek, but Sally took his hand and that of the next man, so they formed a little circle with the other couple. Head couples cross over, and the other couple changed places, so now their circle was boy, girl, boy, girl. Now head couples balance and do-si-do, then Alaman left the one below. Ed watched as the couple leaned in and did a little stomp and shuffle, and then went this by. It went so fast he couldn't quite get it. Then they did the do-si-do that he remembered from gym class when he was in school. Suddenly the woman grabbed his left hand and turned him halfway around before stopping. Now balance and line, the caller said. And then they did some shuffle thing with the other woman and who knew the dance, and dropped his hand and balanced with her partner before starting a long swing. Her skirt flew behind her as they turned very quickly. Ed looked at Sally, who gestured for him to stay put. Balance and swing your partner, then go down the center on your own. Come back and cast off. Ed watched as they walked away from the music, turned around and came back, whereupon the woman scooped her arm around his waist and swung him around almost backwards so that now she was not on his left where they started, but on his right. Ed was thoroughly turned around. But the smiles of those around him told him this was not a problem. And then he heard the fiddle player sawing off a countdown, and before he knew it, the dance began. Bonaparte crossing the Rhine, said Sally, but Ed did not understand what she was saying. It was the name of the tune, in case you want to know. And suddenly his hand was being grabbed by a strange woman, and the Alaman part got to him. He tried to do that stomp and shuffle thing they call a balance, but couldn't quite get it. She smiled anyway, and then was off to her partner for a long swing. Ed was dizzy by now and really had no idea what he was doing, but at every step, strangers were helping him out. Lean forward, lean back, said the strange woman as they balanced 4 in line. Then they walked down the set and back, whereupon she held out her left hand to signal a cast-off and whipped him around twice, the way everybody does when they know what they're doing. Then it all started over, but with a new couple. The dances were designed that way. The music repeated. It was a simple tune, but the fiddler and the pianist added a few jazzy flourishes as they went along. So also the dancers, with added turns, flipped up skirts, and all sorts of swinging. Some lurched, some spun, some clung about the waist ballroom fashion, some with arms linked above like flamenco dancers. The music changed. Reel de Montreal. His new lady mentioned as they balanced in line. The pace didn't change as much as the feel of the dance. It was a little more playful. And Ed realized that everyone was flirting now. Sidelong glances, coy turns of the head. Lady after lady flirted with him, all in fun, of course, but Ed felt a kind of delight that had been absent for a long time.